Welcome to the Being Known podcast with my friend, Dr. Kurt Thompson.
My friend, Pepper Sweeney.
Where we discover and explore what it means to be truly known. On today's podcast, we are going to be continuing our discussions on the 9 domains of integration. And today, we are going to be talking about the interpersonal domain. And Kurt is going to explain why there is no I in interpersonal.
Well, there's the first letter. There's the, but after that, other than that, it's just a single I.
I should change it to winterpersonal, so it's a we at the top. I think that would be
that is
a
nice.
More precise description.
It's the winterpersonal domain. the winterpersonal of my discontent.
Yes. Every time when we get together and record, you experience that, I think.
Gosh, are you people listening to this? Oh my gosh. Man, my friend Pepper Sweeney. Yeah.
Yes. You know, with friends like me. Yes. We're gonna ask me something.
Hey, okay, yes, I was. Dude.
Yeah.
I saw the picture of the lawnmower.
Yes.
Like you were back at it.
I am back, baby.
Tell us about it.
Well, so I got the call yesterday, 2 days ago, that the part came in and it was ready to go, and Junior brought it over and dropped it off for me. It's running like a top, and I got out there and cut it. I didn't have to push it for the third time, which made me really happy, and didn't have to ask for help from anybody. You know, last week when we were recording, and some of the recordings we do, so we put this also up on YouTube, if you guys don't know that, but we put it also up on YouTube, and there's usually some bonus material that doesn't get in the podcast that ends up on the YouTube, so you might want to check that out. But anyway, last week Kurt asked me, when we weren't recording on audio, but it was after the podcast, he challenged me. He said, I have a challenge for you, because the lawnmower hadn't come back yet. He said, I challenge you. The challenge for you is to go and ask Willie to cut your grass for you.
That's right.
Which I said, you're out of your mind. You are completely, you must not know me at all.
That's right. Nothing like a shrink who's out of his mind.
Oh, exactly. And I got to deal with it. It's just not fair. I get the one shrink as a friend who's out of his mind. You know, I don't need more challenges in my life, by the way. I got enough just on the daily. Now I got to go
help you, my brother.
You know, it is interesting. It's very telling about me, because when you said that to me, what came up in me was like, there is no possible way I'm going to do that. Yeah. There's no way that I could do that. And it's obviously something that I need to work on. I just don't want to work on it in that way. I want to take some other steps.
I'm gonna find someone to come over and borrow your mower for a couple of weeks so that you can't find it. And you're gonna have to ask Willie to mow your grass.
And you know what? He would do it. I had the opportunity to. I saw him out the other day, and had the opportunity just to go over and just tell him how grateful I was, and explain to him, you know, if you all didn't hear the last episode, go back and listen to it and you understand what we're talking about. But to just thank him, because he didn't know that what was happening with me. He didn't know that my back had gone out. He didn't know that my lawnmower was, you know, he just saw that I had stopped cutting with my push mower. The grass was really high and I left. And so he just came over and took care of it. So, and he would, if honestly, the amount of times that he says to me, if you need anything, all you got to do is ask. If you need anything, all you got to do is ask. And I've admittedly always had, you know, a hard time asking for help in life, just no matter what it's been. It's a challenge for me.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of, you know, Jesus' words when he says, the reason you don't have is because you don't ask. And of course, you know, growing up in my little Quaker community, I'm thinking like, well, you know, it's not my job to ask. People can ask me for things. I'm more than happy to help if you ask me, but like, I'm not going to ask for help because, of course, I'm going to be putting them out, or I'm going to be revealing that I'm not working hard enough to do what I can do for myself.
Right.
The whole sense of, and not just because we were Quakers, but I mean, because, we were troubled, I mean, because we are, I mean, I think of the rich young ruler who comes to Jesus and says, what must I do to inherit the kingdom of God? What must I do? And, Jesus says like, well, go sell everything you have. The point not being that your wealth is a problem in and of itself, but the point being that the problem is that you only understand life in terms of what you're going to do to make it happen. And the whole notion that the first item of business of life is to allow yourself to be loved in order for your work then to be a complete response to someone else's delight in you, as opposed to the other way around, that I'm working just so that I can make sure that God is at the very, least isn't pissed at me. At the very most, he might see me and like let me into his life. And Jesus is saying, that's not the way this works. That's not the way the world is made. Just kind of like, if I'm today, as we're recording, I'm in my office because I have a meeting right after this. And so I'm here in the office and I'm in the 9th floor. We're on the 9th floor of this building where we are. And I look out, I just look at this just tree line that goes forever out in Northern Virginia. And it's just massively beautiful. We see the weather coming in from the west here. And it'd be kind of like, if I just decided, I just want to get to my car in the parking lot by stepping out of my 9th floor window. And, that's just not the way the world is made. I might want to do that. And if I did that, I'd get to my car really quickly, but I wouldn't realize it when I arrived. And that would be a problem. And this is what we want to do. Like, we want to live in the world, but not according to the way the world is actually made to work. And the world is made to work in such a way that the first thing I do coming out of the uterus is I'm looking for someone looking for me, as we like to say. I'm looking to be loved. And we often forget that in order for me to give into the world, for me to create beauty and goodness in the world, I first have to receive it. I can't give what I don't have. And that leads us right into our conversation today about the interpersonal domain of integration. This sense that we let us make mankind in our image. We read in the Genesis 1 text that this God of a plural relationship, that we who are followers of Jesus talk about, this Trinitarian God, this Father, Son, and Spirit relationship that reaches back into history and says, let us make mankind in our image. And so from the very beginning, we have been made in such a way that to fully bear God's image means that I don't ever do that by myself. I, as a self, as an individual, like, I'm part of that story, and I need to be able to bring myself to the table. But myself is only fully known when I see myself in your eyes, when I hear my story in your voice. And, we were made this way, but, then Genesis 3 comes along after Genesis 1 and 2, and the whole issue of shame separates us, sends us to our respective corners of the ring. And we, from then on, are kind of walking through life. And it's very easy for me to believe that, like, I am in the world and I'm kind of alone and I have to figure out what I'm going to do. And I want to get you to cooperate with me, but I don't often think that much in terms of being with you. I might have to work to get together with you, but I don't imagine that, no, we were made connected. The question is, am I able to allow God to heal my shame so that I can actually see that that's the way the world really is and has always been that way? We talk not just about what we call sin, this brokenness, this separation from one another has led us to imagine that I don't live in the world with others, this withness and we-ness that we like to talk about. But I live as if I'm on my own. My anxiety tells me that I'm on my own. My anxiety tells me that I'm anticipating being alone with what I feel and what I think. And we've also culturally kind of strengthened that notion of being alone. We live with this strange kind of combination of wanting to be more connected, for instance, through social media. We have greater opportunity to see more things, be connected to people and so forth in a certain way. But we know that the data is clear that in the last 10 to 15 years, we've become increasingly disconnected from one another, pushing against the grain of how the world is actually made. And so in some respects, we're all thinking that we can just step outside of the window of our 9th floor offices and get to the parking lot without any trouble. This is kind of how we're living. And I think the results are kind of like that. Like when we see, and then you get a pandemic that gets thrown into all that. And this whole notion that we are a people who are together. The question is, am I able to see that and join with you in that regard, is really an important part of what our mission in life is to be about. For us to create beauty and goodness in the world, I often think I'm on my own to do that, when in fact, I only do that most powerfully with you. And I think, for instance, like this podcast is an example of that. Like it has just been so life-giving to me to work with you and Amy. And we just, did a little greeting for Rachel, who developed, the our logo, and for Noah, who's doing the music. I mean, all of this withness that together brings forth all this beauty.
Yeah. When you were talking about culture and how our culture has set this up, I thought you were going to say, and I want to ask you if you think this is true, that specifically here in the West, there is this sort of spirit of I can do it on my own. The John Wayne kind of, drive it, and I don't need anybody. And I know that when, for me, I can remember times, even in my career as a young actor out in Los Angeles, where people would actually say, I want to help you. And I would think, they don't really want to help me, and I want to do it on my own merit. I want them to hire me because of my talent, because of who I am, not because this person's going to help me. It was crazy making, when I look back on it. But
yeah. Well, I think too, Pepper, about our practice here that we have. There are now 8 of us here that are working, and it is a sight to behold. This group of clinicians, they're just they're smart, they're savvy, they're funny. They're really far funnier than me, which is which isn't saying much. You could be far funnier than me, and it's like if you're more than 0, you're just a lot more.
It's like saying they're far smarter than me.
And I have these moments where I feel, when they say, no, Kurt, we'd like you to, we want to do this and this and this different. And we want, so that you can be kind of cut loose to do what only you can do. And the generosity of spirit of the folks with whom I work you just can't measure it. Like they're just unbelievable. And at the same time, I'm like, no, because I know at some point I'm gonna, I'm not pulling my weight. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I know that's what they're telling me, but secretly they're all going off and having a private meeting in which they're saying other things about me, of course. Right. And again, the paranoia just expands in my head.
Right.
But this sense that, just like you're saying, no, I want to do this on my own merit. I can put my pants on by myself, and if I can't, then shame finds a foothold. And what's so striking is that they would say to me, my colleagues would say to me, Kurt, you often don't get it. Like, when you don't let us do this, you don't let us do what we really want to do and what we are actually made to do. We're actually made to help you do what you do, and because you help us do what we do. And there are other things that they do that I don't do, that they're really good at. And it's still this thing that's banging around in my head that I have to do this by myself.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I've gotten better at it. I can remember when Nell was pregnant with Coleman, our first, and she was put on bed rest for 4 months. and we were living in California, no family around or anything. And our church community and friends and, started calling and saying, we want to bring meals. And I'm like, no, I got this. No, I don't, thanks. We're fine. I don't need any help. And I got to the point where I was broken. I couldn't keep it up anymore. And so somebody was wise enough to see and said, look, we're bringing it. You can't. And they started a meal chain and all, it all, and I had to accept the help then. And I saw the joy that they had when they brought stuff over and were able to help. And I thought, I have responsibility in this, because it's not just about, it can't just be I can't feel shame in taking the help, because that not only hurts me, but it hurts them because they're wanting to do it and I'm refusing them.
Right. It is a, Pepper, we've talked about attachment here. And I think on other episodes, we'll come back and look at that even more closely. But one of the things that we recognize, that attachment, you all have heard us talk about this notion that there is what we call secure attachment. And then we have these 3 different insecure forms of attachment. And one finds that with secure attachment, this sense of being connected to the other person and one's awareness that we need the other person's brain to help us regulate our emotional states. And as we get older, we find that we become that for other people as well. We move from being able to take that from our parents to then, as we get to be adolescents and we start to share that with our peer group. And then as we become older adults, we may have younger friends, or we may have children of our own that we are now being the outside brain for. But this whole process is a really robust way of us living in this world of we-ness and withness, this sense of collaborative, this interpersonal, right? That we are embodied and relational minds, that we love the Lord our God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, which includes our embodied self and the embodied self of others with whom we are loving God together. But with insecure attachment, we have an almost infinite array in which our sense of we-ness goes off kilter. We've talked about an insecure and avoidant form, which is that form in which emotion isn't something that I really need. I don't really get much out of it, so I don't pay that much attention to it consciously. It doesn't mean that I'm not experiencing it. I've just cut off my capacity to be aware of it. I don't use it very well. And so I learn that I can get through the world without the other. I just got to bear down and get it done. I'm going to rich young ruler it. I'm just going to go find out from God what God needs me to do for him. And then I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to get what I need at the end of the day. And so in that sense, I also isolate myself. I am disconnected from the world. If we are insecure and anxiously attached, or insecure and ambivalently, that's the other word, ambivalently attached, then I'm also emotion is in the room, I'm paying attention to it, but I can't really trust that you are either going to not leave me, or I can't trust that you're not going to be too intrusive. So I'm constantly kind of having to keep my eye out for where you are, always anxious about you're being too far away or too close, but I can't just exhale. If you're within, 100 yards, I got to worry that you're going to be 200 yards away. But if you get closer than 100 yards, that how this goes. But either way, I see myself as over here having to manage you over there. I don't see us as being this collaborative community together. I don't see how I'm not able to exhale in your presence and just trust that if you want to help me, I'm going to say yes, because of course there's no anxiety that gets created because oh my gosh, you're getting too close.
Right.
Right. Because this is what someone does. If someone comes and offers you a meal, Nell's had a baby and, you're working and Nell's what do you mean you're not taking the meal? Take the meal. I want to eat. I don't want to eat your cooking.
Right.
Take the dang meal. Right. But the point being that I'm still living as if I'm on my own.
Right.
And in both cases, both what we call ambivalent and avoidant, there is a certain anxiety that emerges with the avoidant person. They're not necessarily aware of it, but they act it out. And with the anxious person, they're much more consciously aware of their anxiety. But in either case, they're living a lot of life anticipating the future as one in which they're alone, but they also live right now as if they are also disconnected from others. And, this then, even when it comes to healing, people come into the office all the time and they want to know, well, Kurt, what are, you and I going to do so that I can be helped? Because their assumption is that they are responsible for their well-being, for their healing. And of course, they come to see the doctor, they come to see the psychiatrist or the internist or the surgeon, and they come to get help so that they can then go home and do it on their own. Because that is what we are anticipating. We like to, every now and then again, we like to talk about physics here on our podcast. This is why most people are tuning in.
This is where you turn it over to me, right?
That's right. Exactly. So take it away.
The physics of silence. Let's just all listen for a minute.
Dude, you have no... You have no idea. We're going to do it. We're going to do an episode on this.
Okay.
I hope Amy is taking notes because we are going to do an episode on silence.
Well,
and you can imagine how exciting that episode is going to be,
yes.
folks.
Well, we've done some silent work together. We've done some. I mean, I've been in events where Kurt would be up speaking and he would take these pauses, and I would be directing the event, and I'd be getting really anxious because I think, okay, did he have a stroke? Are we, or it'd be his time to go up, but he would just be waiting until he was ready and until the rest of the room was uncomfortable. And my anxiety levels are going up because I can't get across the room to him to cue him. And then he would go up and I would be able to breathe again.
Bro, I think I was just reinforcing that it's a we-ness. Like we are together,
yes,
like we are connected to each other. Okay, so let's talk about the Heisenberg principle then for just a moment, if we can.
Please.
I know that you all have been waiting with bated breath for this very moment, the Heisenberg principle. Heisenberg was a physicist who kind of ran around with, Einstein and a couple of other rather dull characters. And he formulated this idea that, you hear about this in science circles, this notion that, if you're going to do an experiment, this notion that if you want to observe the experiment, whether it's a chemical reaction, whether it's a group of people in the room, whatever it is, that because of quantum mechanics, this sense that like, if you were to, we have these individual bodies, but you break down these bodies into molecules and molecules into atoms. And then it just goes into smaller and smaller and smaller particles. And before you know it, you recognize that the boundaries between things that seem to be so plainly boundaried off are not quite so clear. And you come to discover that if you're in a room, quite technically, from a quantum mechanics standpoint, your very presence, even though like I'm over here and I'm watching the chemical reaction take place over there on the bench, or I'm over here and I'm watching this couple in the room have a conversation, I don't think that I'm having any impact on this. I'm just here observing this. And what we don't recognize is that we have been made in such a way that we can't not influence settings in which we enter into the room. Now, in some respects, the degree to which we interact with that setting is much more limited. I can probably watch a chemical reaction in a chemistry lab that would happen pretty much in the same way that it would if I were or weren't in the lab, for the most part. If you got real technical about it, you would say, no, there would probably be quantum differences in what's happening in the room between me and whatever those things are that are going on in the chemistry lab. But when you're sitting in the room with your two children who are fighting with each other, Or if I'm sitting in the room with a couple who are having to, work things out, and they turn to me and look at me and like, could you please tell him that like I'm right and he's wrong? Or vice versa, right? Suddenly, like you realize, like, no, there is an interpersonal domain. Like I am the way the world is working is that I'm having influence in the world. Like it is a domain that exists whether we want it to or not. And so we come then to some really crucial questions when we recognize that even right down to the quantum mechanics of it, that your presence in the world matters. And we don't have to insert that significance. It's just there. The question is, are we awake to it? Are we alert to it? Are we attuned to it? When Jesus in Matthew chapter 5 says to his listeners, you are the light of the world. We may have talked about this before. That when I hear this phrase, this notion that when Jesus said, you're the light of the world, who would light a lamp and stick it under a bushel? Well, no one. And so I hear him say, Kurt, you're the light of the world. Don't screw it up. Right. But I think as we've said here before, perhaps, like, no, Jesus is saying you are utterly illuminating, which means that when you walk into the room, your light is going to, like, it's going to mean something to people. But if I myself think that if I'm walking around believing that actually I'm siloed, that I walk into a room and nobody sees me, it certainly changes my own response to me. It changes my response to the other. It changes my awareness of like we-ness. I don't sense that. I don't see that. But when I am paying attention to we-ness, when I'm paying attention to the fact that we are connected, and the question is going to be when I walk in the room, whose life is going to be made more beautiful because now I'm in their life with them? That's the question. We do a lot of work here in our practice in what we call confessional communities, otherwise known in most circles as group therapy. And we do a lot of work believing that when people are in these communities, that there's so much more that can get done than if you're seeing a therapist individually. There are reasons for that, but one of the most poignant moments that happens over and over and over again for any number of different people is, before a person enters into the group and we're kind of getting a sense of whether or not they're ready to start a group or be part of a group, well, I will tell them, I really want you to know that not only do I think the group is going to be helpful for you, but I think you're going to be helpful for the group. But I want you to know that the way you're going to be helpful might not be the way you think. When we're going to help somebody, we typically think we're going to help by offering them, yes, I see the smile on your face. Take it from there.
Offering them advice and help and words of wisdom.
Yeah. And truly, Pepper, you have been a help in many times of trouble for me by offering those very things. But I tell them, it's not that your wit and your wisdom won't be helpful. They will be, but they won't be the most powerful thing. The most powerful way that you're going to be helpful for someone else is by your vulnerability. Is when you put language to the parts about yourself that you hate the most. When you're willing to open the door to the room where all your shame lives. And of course, they're like, you're whacked. You're absolutely whacked. And these are not perhaps mutually exclusive realities. I mean, I may be, but it's still true that it is in our vulnerability that we actually shed light. We bring light into the room. And it is in that moment that we recognize that, oh my goodness, part of how I discovered joy is that I'm able to share my vulnerability with someone else. That joy comes not as a self-contained thing that I just have by myself. Joy comes explicitly because I am intentionally looking to be connected with the other. And especially in those moments when I'm having to do work of repairing ruptures with the other. Especially when I'm having to do work with someone who I see as totally different than me. So it's not hard for you all this morning to think about, well, who are the people in the world for you that are different, who are politically different, who are ethnically different, who are economically different, all the ways who, like, you're married to them and they're really different, and so forth and so on. Who are the people, where are the people where there have been wounds? And by wounds, I don't mean not just that, if you've been traumatized, I'm not talking about you're having to go make up with somebody who's traumatized you, but where there have been relational breaches that you want to be healed. Recognizing that life and beauty and goodness are to be found in this sense of connection with others. And so we find in these confessional communities that their life that they live in other domains outside of this confessional community is made all the richer because of the work that they're actually doing in the confessional community, naming who they are and receiving the reality of the others in the room. And in this way, they're practicing recognizing how the world really most powerfully, most beautifully works.
I feel like you were saying you find joy in repairing the rupture. That's where to me, it's you find joy once the rupture is repaired. But
Right.
You're saying that you find life, beauty, and goodness in the actual repairing of the
Right.
rupture.
Right. So, it would make sense that if I have a hard thing to do, let's just take an example. If you're a third-year medical student and you find yourself in the ER and they bring in somebody who's been in a major motor vehicle accident, multiple traumas, you're pretty overwhelmed, and you're glad that there are attending physicians in the room that are going to help you do your work. And so the attending physician, she starts to run the trauma protocol in the ER, and then they move it to the surgical suite, and she's still running that protocol, and you're learning along the way, but you're glad that you're not in charge.
Right.
And if someone were to thrust the third-year medical student into that situation, they'd be overwhelmed. I wouldn't want to think about doing that. But you go from third year to fourth year to first year surgical residence, second, third, fourth, fifth year surgical chief. You see how this goes. At some point, we all know that there's going to be a little bit of anxiety, but that if as you gather competence, as you gather experience in repairing ruptures, you discover that, yes, of course, I'm going to be relieved when it's all done. Of course, the surgeon is glad when we know that the patient is in the recovery room, they've done well. But that surgeon actually begins to envision that surgeon sees beauty long before it ever gets out of the OR. And we then begin to practice going to look for opportunities to repair ruptures. Not because ruptures themselves are fun, not because we would want for anyone to be in motor vehicle accidents, but because we know that the God who has made us in his image, this we-ness, can't live without us. God doesn't want to live without us. He wouldn't, and in fact, he's not even going to let death get in the way of it. He'd rather die than be separated from us. And so he does, because he knows that something else is coming. He walks into the OR and he already knows what he's going to do. He already knows what he's going to do. And it's going to catch all of us off guard. And it begins with his deep awareness that we are an interpersonally connected set of people. Now, one really important thing to say here, Pep, is that, some of you all might be listening and thinking, well, gosh, with all this we crap, do I just, disappear? Do I just disappear? I've just become like a little drop of water in the ocean. And this is where Christian anthropology is so beautiful. He's like, no, absolutely not. In fact, the more deeply connected we are with others, the more we become aware of their uniqueness. And the more I become aware, the more I see myself in your eyes, the more of me, who I really am, I become acquainted with. And so it's a paradox, because like I'm so afraid that I'm just going to get swallowed in the vastness of the ocean. And in fact, we become that much more aware of the distinct things. I've got this book that's coming in October that we'll talk about soon enough. And I'm just so honored and touched because the Japanese-American painter Makoto Fujimura is writing the foreword, and we're going to have 4 of his prints in the book. And it's just, it's pretty overwhelming. And when you look at his work, this Japanese art form of Nihonga, Nihonga, it's this abstract work that uses all of this pulverized mineral, and it's hand pulverized, and he specially lays these different minerals on the canvas, and like you can't believe what you're seeing.
It's unbelievable. It's so beautiful.
Right. You can't believe what you're seeing. But what's so interesting is that like the whole canvas, like the weeness of all the color is made what it is because of the distinction of each of the minerals that are overlaid on the canvas. And you get this deeply felt sense of like, of course, this is like, you see the whole thing. You wouldn't want to just have, right, just one of those minerals. Like they're beautiful in themselves, but you want them to be together, but you want them to be together in this way in which they're matched with each other, differentiated, right? But their differentiation is made that much more special because of the presence of all the other minerals. And so even in our, again, we could jump from, example to example, like redwood forests, right? They are together. Like you could look at any single redwood and it's like unbelievable. But the reason it's even able to do it is because it's all the root system is connected together underground with all the other redwoods that are growing up. And so it only gets to be what it is, this one massive tree, because it's connected to all the other trees. And so it is in that sense that we then, when we think about what are we doing in our lives, what kind of practical value would this have for us? We think about who are the people that we long to be connected with. Some of you all may be listening to this and you might not easily name somebody. You might say, well, I would long to be connected with, John or with Sarah, but like, I can't imagine that they would want to be connected to me. And I would want to say that there's nobody that I know that doesn't long to be longed for. There's nobody that I know that wouldn't love to hear from someone, I just really want to know more about you. And I would really love to share more of me with you, because I want to live into this we-ness and withness in order for all of us to be more particularly who we each are as individuals.
I was just thinking about the lyrics to a song that it's not a new song, but it's something that I just discovered, somehow popped up on my Spotify or something. It's a Pearl Jam song, and there's a lyric, and he sings, "I'm a lucky man because I can count on both hands the ones I love. Some folks they have one, others they have none." And it's heartbreaking to think of those people that have none, right?
Right.
And there are people that have none.
Right.
There are people that have none.
I think in this time of COVID, and we're now, depending upon, what part of the country you're in, at what time in 2020 it reached your shores, the shores of your city or your county, wherever you live. There's no question that in the last 3 months, even as we've obtained vaccines.
Mhm.
People are starting to be more connected physically in greater and greater numbers, and there's greater hopefulness. There is also, as we're pulling the curtain back, we're just seeing more evidence of the devastation that it has brought for so many people. I'm thinking of a friend of mine whose child, high school senior, who was just top of their class as a junior, everything you could imagine that they were, you name it. 4-point something student because they don't have enough A's to give to them.
Right.
Eagle Scout, all the whole everything, and they're not the same person because they've been so cut off. And I think of the number of people whose lives have really become made much, much more difficult. And it is a testimony, Pepper, to the fact that we are we.
Yeah.
As much as we'd like to think that we could get away from it, and as much as we've actually, in the last 20 years, been practicing trying to get away from people, whether we've known it or not, especially, not to indict it, but especially in our social media, right? I can just lob all kinds of grenades out into the social media, field, and then I don't have to be accountable for that. I can just do whatever. I forget that what I'm doing is I'm acting like a redwood who's cutting off my roots from the other trees in the forest because, I don't like the way you look. And before you know it, why is it that my branches are starting to wilt?
Right.
And so I would love for us all to be, doing a couple things. One is, just some practical things. Like in the next month, you can do this for the next 4 weeks. Each week, I want you to think, and this is not complicated, but it won't be easy.
Okay.
And that is number one. I would like for you to think of one person that you could write to them as a way of making contact. Write to them, and if you're willing and able to, write them a handwritten note to tell them what it is about them that you're grateful for. Because in so doing, you are connecting. You are kind of like, whether you know it or not, even if you're offering gratitude to them, you're actually, in many respects, you're bringing them a meal, right? They're like you and Nell, right? It's this group that's bringing you a meal. Right. You're bringing them a meal, because when someone gives you a thank you note, they're giving you a meal. And especially if they tell you, here's exactly why I'm grateful for you. And if you do it on a handwritten note, it's kind of like you've gone to the trouble of, you didn't just go to Chick-fil-A and pick up some fast food, you baked bread for them.
Right.
And in that note that you thank them, there's one more thing that I want to invite you to consider doing. I want to invite you to consider saying, here's the thing that I'm thankful for you, and here's the part of my life that wouldn't be what it is. This is the part of my life that actually needed that from you. I'm going to thank you for what you did. So you're going to name what they did, what they've been to you, but you're also going to name, what is it about me that so deeply needs and responds to and feels loved by, what the particular part of me that feels loved by you. So it's a 2-part activity that's all wrapped into one thank you note. And for the next 4 weeks, I want you to pick a person every week. You can, this might be a person that you're in touch with. This might be a person that you're not in touch with very often. But the things that you're going to name, I want them to be things that you haven't named for them. That we're going to think about things that are really meaningful. And these are small steps in which we are actually, in embodied ways, taking active steps to affirm and live into the way the world is made. This is like, oh, I'm going to take the elevator down the 9 floors to the parking lot. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to go out my 9th floor window. I'm going to live the way the world was made to live. And I want to say to you, when we do this, when we live with the awareness that we are connected to people, you walk into the room and you're assuming, you're knowing that They might not even know it, but they can't wait to hear my voice say, it's so good to see you. And you watch what happens, right? You watch what happens when you thank somebody or somebody thanks you for something. And you just say, wait, I just want to take that in. And they're like looking around because this is weird, right? They're looking, and you're like, I'm not just like passing in the night this compliment that you pitched to me. No, I'm going to take it in. I'm going to ingest. I'm going to digest. I'm going to metabolize this. And I'm doing it not just for me. I'm doing it for us. Because everything that we do that strengthens the we-ness and the with-ness in our communities means that the next COVID that we have to deal with, whatever form that takes, we are going to be a far more resilient bunch that will be able to withstand in that space. When Jesus says, in this world, you will have tribulation. He doesn't just say, but it'll be all right. He says, be of good cheer. He says actively, even in the face of tribulation, be of good cheer because I have overcome the world. He doesn't say, be of good cheer because I'm going to give you your 5 quick steps to self-efficacy. I'm going to give you your 3 quick steps to ruling the world. Here's the next set of things that you on your own can do. No, because I have done this. We can know together that you can be of good cheer. You're of good cheer because I am with you, because I'm never going to leave you or forsake you, because you are yoked to me in my yoke, because you've picked up your cross and we're carrying these crosses together now. And it is in those spaces, of course, of suffering, wherein which when we are connected to each other, it is in those places where beauty emerges, the likes of which we would never be able to imagine otherwise, especially if I thought I was responsible for somehow making this happen all by myself. If any single one of those minerals were to think to itself, I somehow have to carry the weight of this painting.
Right.
But in the hand of Mako Fujimura, they know that they are a canvas of we-ness and withness. And in that spirit, each mineral itself is put on its full display in ways that it otherwise never could be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I am so blessed that I get to be a part of the we on this particular podcast, Kurt. And I say that in full sincerity. I feel like I'm learning every week and growing as I try to put this more into practice. And I'm grateful for you. And if you need my address, if you need my address to send that letter, I'll get it to you afterwards. Actually, you can take it off of the return of address, the letter that I send you. Fair enough?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. But you weren't supposed to say that because like I was going to get it from Amy, and that way like you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know that it's coming.
I don't think she has it either. So I mean, I want to be known, but I don't want to be located.
Yeah.
As usual, Kurt. Go ahead. You wanted to say something else.
I just say I love that. I'm just thinking it's a new phrase. How to be known, but not located. But never located. That's the podcast in which you can be truly known, but never located.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, until next time, I appreciate you.
My brother. Love you so much. Until next time.
Love you.
A couple of things stood out to me. So the rules of engagement, like the story of I would rather walk out my window and get to my car like that. And how many times do we try to force that? That's not the way things work. Yeah. You would only get to try to make that work once, but right. There are other things, like the whole we've got to be loved. So rules of
Yeah.
engagement. And then when you said we are illuminating, we talked about that before, like when we walk into the room.
Yeah.
And we talked about our story, and it's what we believe to be true. Like if we believe that allowing or asking for help will foster connection, will bolster connection. If we believe that to be true, then we would embrace that.
Right. So I'd say this. So have you guys watched any part of The Chosen?
I have not.
No.
Do you know about it?
I don't.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know.
So in circles around here, I've been hearing about it now for almost 2 years, probably 2 years. No, a year and a half. It's called The Chosen, and it's basically, it is a fusion of all the gospel stories, and they've completed filming of 2 seasons. They're funding it, I think, however they're funding it. And they're shooting the seasons as they get funded. I watched 3 episodes of the first season, and if some might say it's not Oscar-winning acting, but I got to tell you, it is good enough. They're like, I am completely smitten, and the opening. I won't spoil it. The opening episode highlights a number of characters, including Mary Magdalene, and I'll just say there is an encounter that she has, and like it just blew me away. And why am I saying all this? I'm saying, like, so the character of Jesus, I can't remember his name, but the character of Jesus is so winsomely compelling, and as a carpenter and so forth and so on, and as are the other characters. But but one of the characters that you also get introduced to right away is Nicodemus. And I love the way that the way that whoever these cats are that are doing this, I love the way they're telling the story, right? And Nicodemus is, he's like a 58-year-old white dude. I mean, he's like me. I mean, like he's this, although far smarter. And the encounter that we read about in John 3:16, but like you come to discover. So this is all going to make sense. I'm saying, like, I'm having this experience with this film. I mean, and they're like 40 minutes long. And so when you said, Amy, it all depends on what you believe. Like, what do you believe that's true about yourself? Mm-hmm. But what I believe is not it is not a cognitive construct. It is what my embodied ingested, digested, metabolized experience in life is about whether or not I actually feel myself being illuminating, like in my chest. Mm-hmm. It's not, do I believe this? I don't know, as an abstraction, do I believe this as a cognitive principle? And in this, like, watching this show, like, I feel stuff because you feel like you're watching the real character, wow. like be what Jesus would be, and you're like, holy cow! Like, this is very different than just having somebody preach about this from the pulpit. Mm-hmm. And then I think about what we do here, and I think that making this podcast has, in a very important way, in the last however many months we've been doing this, has changed me. Mm-hmm. I feel the presence of the two of you. It's the doing it now. Like we're on the air, we're recording. It's the occasional, kind of business meeting we might have. It's the looking forward to it. Mm-hmm. And this sense of being in the presence of both of you like gives me a deep felt sense in the middle of my solar plexus of like I'm loved. And it's not it's like even if I didn't have those words, I could tell you when I'm with these two, like I feel really like I'm just like that's what it means for me. And so I can go do just about anything because they're like right here with me.
And you take it with you. We take it with us. I take
yeah. I take you with me. And anyway, so I mean to the interpersonal domain thing, like I've just had the experience of even doing this podcast has been restorative for me. Yeah. So I'm just so dang grateful.
Pep, you were about to say something.
Oh, I was going to talk about I almost went back to this when we were recording, but we had moved on. And I didn't want to backtrack, but I just, this whole idea of if we understand our part in the we, and we understand the importance of the we, and then we're okay with gathering competence in repairing ruptures. And so because we have the anticipated future of what happens when we repair these, ruptures, because we've experienced it. And I'm hoping that I don't have to do it 10,000 hours like Malcolm Gladwell's rule. Because
20 minutes,
I'm personally not yet at a place where I'm looking forward to repairing ruptures.
Right.
And as I speak this right now, there is a little bit of a rupture that I need to repair after this recording. So
you have my number at that, right?
Yeah, I got it on speed dial. And
would you like us to join you? I mean, we could just be your sentinels.
No, you will be with me. Honestly,
okay, yeah.
This,
I get it,
because having gone through this conversation today, has got me thinking about something that happened yesterday that I got to make right, and I have to get the shovel out and get my heels out of that place that they're dug into, and lift them up and be a little lighter, tread a little lighter, and anticipate. Because I have, trust me, I have enough experience in screwing up and repairing that I know what happens after the repair.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that was just something.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
go. Go.
Okay, so this is a story. It's all connected, right? And it's all intertwined. But back on the illuminating thing, I have a story. One of my cousins, of which I have on my dad's side, I think like 40. So there are a lot of us cousins. And one cousin, is getting married. And I received an invitation. Now, he cannot possibly invite the whole family and then all of his fiance's family and all their friends. And so when I got the invite, I was like, how did I make the cut? Like, and so then it is what I believe about that will impact the way I show up to the wedding.
Right.
It matters.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. And I obviously, I don't know anything about this story, but if it were me, I think like, I'm wondering if this is a mistake. I'm wondering if this, did they meant to send it to,
It went to the wrong address.
Went to the wrong address. Yeah. But I love the idea that somebody thinks I want Amy at this wedding. I want Amy at this wedding. And I would love for you to be thinking, what's your cousin's name?
Joshua.
He chose me. He picked me.
Yeah.
He picked me. He picked me.
Yeah. Well, and we've had a brief conversation because I didn't want to be like, well, why'd you pick me? But we were talking. I did laugh. I said, I'm not sure how I made the cut, but I will be there. And he's like, you are delightfully fun and you love our family. And it's like, okay, that's not obligation. Because I kept thinking he's obligated because of this and that. It's like, no.
Right.
He thinks I'm fun and I love our family. So I am going to show up and walk through the doors like I was chosen, not out of obligation.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's
It's
really
what
good.
we believe. That's where it's like the rules of engagement. What we believe matters. So
Yeah. You know, it's also. I mean, I now that I'm thinking about it, I maybe could have been a little more intentional about a storytelling vignette. It's so common. I mean, this happens. You know, it happened with Cain and Abel, and then it gets expanded, you know, to the scale of society. So it's politics and it's ethnicity and all the things, in which when the wounds come, when the wounds have happened, it becomes really easy to imagine that if there is a party who's responsible for the wound, then we tend to think that like they are also responsible for the repair, like 100% of the repair.
Mm-hmm. It's on them.
And I'm blanking on her name now. There's an author of a book called After the Affair. It's a really good book on marital repair explicitly in the wake of an affair. And she talks about the fact that it only requires one person to have an affair, meaning of the married couple. You know, you can't say, well, I had the affair because of the marriage, right? One person is just responsible. Only one person is responsible for this affair. Mm-hmm. But both parties are responsible for the repair of that rupture. Both parties are responsible. And of course, that kind of runs counter to us, right? And I think about, again, the interpersonal domain. I think about the fact that if we're going to have repair, there are certain things that I have to do, but there will also be certain things that the other person has to do. And we need each other in order for us to, it's hard for me to tolerate my shame and acknowledge and say, this is what I did. Will you forgive me? I like this one, and this is what I want to do to repent of this. They have to receive that. It's hard for them to receive that because they have to take the risk that they're going to forgive this person. And then are they going to trust this person again? Like all the things that both parties have to do in order for both parties to be whole. But when they do, that's when we say, at the end of the day, the relationship is actually more resilient, more beautiful than it was even before the rupture took place.
This podcast is produced by Kurt Thompson, Pepper Sweeney, and myself, Amy Chella. Audio production and music is by Keaton Simons. If you'd like to connect with us, you can visit us on our website, beingknownpodcast.com, or you can find us on social media at beingknownpod. Be well, be known.